Okay, good evening and welcome to the March 24th, 2025 meeting of the Barnstable Planning Board here at Barnstable Town Hall. We are at 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass, in the James H. Crocker Jr. Hearing Room, located on the second floor, and it is 7 p.m. The meeting notice has been previously filed with the town clerk in accordance with Mass General Law. All application materials may be accessed through the Planning Board website or by contacting Karen Pina at karen.pina@town.barnstable.ma.us or calling 508-862-4064. Notice of recording: the meeting will be televised live via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream on the town's website, which is streaming85.townofbarnstable.us. And I will now inquire whether anyone else is recording, and if so, please make your presence known. Seeing none, we will call the meeting to order and introduce our board members, starting with Matt.
Hi, Matt Haig.
Mary.
Mary Barry.
Bob.
Bob Joyce.
Tim.
Good evening, Tim O'Neill.
And staff, Jim.
Good evening, Jim Cupford, Director of Planning.
Karen.
Karen, I have no mic, but Karen, Planning and Development, Admin Assistant.
Perfect, thank you, Karen. And my name is Steve Robichaud. We'll start with general public comment. This is for any public comment from any members of the public that is not related to our agenda this evening. Please come forward if you have any general public comment. Seeing none, we will continue to our first item this evening. Matt, would you like to take our A&R this evening?
I'd love to. This is a, let me see, which way I read it off of the. An approval not required plan entitled Plan of Land 291 Flint Street, Barnstable, Marston's Mills, Mass., prepared for Jeffrey Kashuluk, prepared by Sullivan Engineering, last revised February 11th, 2025, has been submitted to the board for endorsement as an approval not required plan. The plan proposes to divide Lot 4 on Flint Street into lots 1 through 5.
Perfect, thank you very much. And the board is in receipt of a staff report dated March 24, 2025. This is not a public hearing, does not need to be open, closed. We have the applicant with us. Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting, representing Jeff Kashuluk. I think that your description pretty well covered it. We have a just over 10.5 acre parcel on Flint Street, and we're here seeking your approval to divide that into 5 2+ acre lots with the required frontage and shape factors.
Staff, anything to add?
No, nothing. This is fairly straightforward.
Beautiful piece of land, very straightforward. Board, questions, comments, concerns? Matt?
None.
Mary?
All set, thank you.
Bob?
I'm good.
Tim?
I'm all set.
And I, too, am all set. And Matt, just a reminder, we're going to need to read in the findings to our motion.
I move that we approve the approval not required plan as submitted, subject to the following findings. It does not constitute a subdivision because each of the lots has the minimum required frontage onto an existing way, having suitable grades and adequate construction to provide the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to the proposed use, and for the installation of municipal services to serve such use, or has been labeled as not buildable. And all materials and conditions of Chapter 801, Article 4, approval not required plans have been submitted, are in full compliance. So I would move that we endorse the plan of land, plan entitled Plan of Land 291 Flint Street, Barnstable, Marston's Mills, Mass., prepared for Jeffrey Kashuluk, prepared by Sullivan Engineering, last revised February 11th, 2025, as an approval not required plan.
Thank you very much. Well done. Do we have a second?
This is Tim, I'll second.
Thank you, Tim. All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving along to our second agenda item this evening, we have a zoning amendment. Tim, would you mind reading this one into the record?
Sure, no problem. This is Town Council item number 2025-075, proposal to amend the code of the Town of Barnstable, Part 1, General Ordinances, Chapter 240 zoning, to add 3 properties to the multifamily affordable housing residential district to allow for by right affordable housing in addition to special permit affordable housing, and to add parking requirements, roof-mounted solar system requirements, principal permitted uses, and other multifamily affordable housing requirements. This is a public hearing, right? So do we have to have a motion to open the public hearing?
That'd be great.
I would make a motion to open the public hearing.
Thank you. In a second. There's a second from Bob. All those in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Public hearing is open. Tim, thank you for that. Anytime we have a zoning amendment, I always like to start with a nice explanation from staff. Just like to remind myself of the source of the zoning amendment, what brought it before us this evening, as well as the voting threshold.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning and Development. So as we always do with zoning amendments, we begin with the law that allows for zoning amendment to come before you. So Mass General Law 48, Section 5 states that adoption or change of zoning ordinances or bylaws may be initiated by submission to City Council or Board of Selectmen of a proposed zoning ordinance or bylaw by a City Council, a Board of Selectmen, a Board of Appeals, by an individual owning land to be affected by change or adoption, by request of registered voters of a town pursuant to Section 10 of Chapter 39, by 10 registered voters in a city, by a planning board, by a regional planning agency, or by other methods provided by municipal charter. So what you have before you this evening is a zoning proposal submitted by our town council, sponsored by Councilor Ludke, who's in the audience this evening. And the proposal that's before you is to amend the zoning ordinance. Currently, we have an ordinance entitled Multifamily Affordable Housing Residential District. And the zoning proposal before you is to add 3 properties to the multifamily affordable housing residential district to allow by right affordable housing in addition to special permit affordable housing requirements, and to add parking requirements, roof-mounted solar system requirements, new principal permitted uses, and other multifamily affordable housing requirements as reflected in the red line version before you. Again, this is submitted by our town councilor, and it has been submitted to town council, and the town council has now referred it to the planning board. The planning board must forward an advisory report with recommendations on the proposed amendment back to town council within 21 days after close of board's hearing. So right now, the clock hasn't started. It's once you close the hearing, you then have 21 days to issue that recommendation back to the town council. I'm happy to go through the red line version if you wish. I'm not sure if the proponent wishes to speak to it. It's up to the chair.
I think that was great, by the way. And the voting threshold is a majority of members present.
Correct, for the recommendation back to town council. Once it gets to town council, because it's a housing zoning amendment, and we are a housing choice community, it's a majority of the council at that time.
Got it. Thank you for that. Would love to go through the red line version. We don't have copies here in our hands, so we'll look at them on the screen.
All right, excellent. So I'll just walk through the red line version, and please stop me if you have any questions. And then at the end, I'm certainly happy to open up to any questions. So again, the MAH residential district is an existing zoning district, and it's allowed essentially at 850 Falmouth Road. So this was established some time ago for essentially the property at 850 Falmouth Road. The request here is to expand that district by adding in section B, you'll see there 577 Falmouth Road, 825 Falmouth Road, and 767 Falmouth Road. So 577 Falmouth Road is a vacant lot that's essentially across from the DPW facility. Then the other 2 lots, 825 Falmouth Road and 767 Falmouth Road, are essentially the Barnstable Adult Community Center property and the directly abutting property that is also owned by the town. The purpose is to authorize by right uses. So we're adding by right use of duplexes in this district as proposed. So as you scroll down to principal permitted uses, sorry, take a second to load. There we go. So now we add, so originally, single-family was allowed, and we're adding duplex residential to this principal permitted uses district. There was already special permit uses for multifamily, and that's really why you see, or the end result is that 850 Falmouth Road, that's how that was permitted through this ordinance at that time. So we continue along. The suggested adjustments to the bulk regulations. Again, once it loads, the minimum lot area is reduced from essentially 2 acres to 1 acre. The setbacks are important, so I want to make sure that they load. Okay. The setbacks for the front go from 60 to 15. The sides from 30 to 10, and the rear from 30 to 10. The height doesn't change. Density requirements. The total number of residential units allowed as permitted uses or within the multifamily affordable housing development, so that is that by right and that special permit requirement, are 20 units per acre of upland, so 20 units per acre. Multiple principal building structures are permitted per lot. So again, this allows for that duplex use. And so now this would allow for multiple duplexes on one parcel of land. I believe you did receive correspondence from myself after speaking with Councilor Ludke. And she has requested that this parking be adjusted per her proposal from parking of 1.5 parking spaces to 2 parking spaces. So that should then read 2 parking spaces are required per residential dwelling unit. Parking dimensions shall be a minimum of 9 feet by 18 feet. Drive aisles between parking spaces shall be a minimum of 22 feet. So everything in red is new. There wasn't parking standards from the old one, so this is added into it. In addition, there's a solar requirement. So as it's spelled out here, each residential structure shall be required to install roof-mounted solar systems equal to at least 6 watts per square foot of conditioned space. Exceptions shall be granted if natural vegetative shading makes all or part of the roof-mounted solar system non-viable. The total installed solar may be reduced if it can be shown that the mandated size would exceed the annual energy needs of the structure. The size may be reduced by 25% if the battery system of 5 kilowatt or larger is installed. Exceptions shall be if natural vegetation shading makes all or part of the roof-mounted solar systems not viable. We continue on to affordable. This increases the affordable to 100%. So there was an existing requirement for affordable. This requires 100% of the dwelling units shall be affordable units as defined further below. I will note there are some specific requirements, and I'll go through each one of them. These are modeled after the Commonwealth Builder Program at the state, just for transparency and awareness. The first, affordable units for principal permitted uses. So again, those principal permitted uses are single and duplexes, single family and duplexes. Affordable units may be developed as principal permitted uses shall not be subject to Chapter 9, Article 1. So that's the inclusionary that's on the books today. So we're outlining new affordable standards here. An individual or household with total annual income that does not exceed the following percentages of area median income for the town of Barnstable as determined annually by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, who typically creates these standards. 10% of the units shall be affordable to individuals who qualify as no greater than 70% of the area median income, so 10% at 70%. And 90% of the units shall be affordable to individuals who qualify between 70 and 100. So that 70 and 100 is above what we typically do, but this is 90%, where the current standard for inclusionary is 10% at 65%.
Jim, do you mind if we pause here for one moment?
Of course.
This is something that kind of piqued my interest as I was reading through this, and I was curious to learn about how this differs from what's typically required. I know we have had a lot of conversations about how the current standards sometimes some people make too much. You know what I mean? And we've heard from Stu that, you know, and others that it's difficult sometimes to get people to even apply because they make too much money. So this going from 70% to 100%, really to me, that seems to appeal to, you know, the workforce housing. Is that kind of what you would agree with?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. This would open the door for additional individuals that wouldn't typically be allowed or would be able to submit for these units. So yes, it would work closer towards that workforce housing group that we have been seeking as a town.
Okay, and again, the current standard is it 65%?
Correct.
Okay,
10% at 65%.
understood. All right, thank you for that.
Can I ask a follow-up question, sir?
Absolutely.
Jim, assuming this becomes enacted as it's currently in draft form, would these units count as part of our affordable housing units in terms of meeting the state mandated target?
That's an excellent question. So some would, some would not. So 80% or less. So if you are 80% area median income or less, so if these are deed restricted as 80% or less, they could be counted on the subsidized housing inventory. But as you see in the next section, we talk about a shorter deed restriction. So our current inclusionary housing ordinance requires in perpetuity, whereas we're talking 15 years. And that has some pluses and minuses to that as well. So if you are 80% or less area median income, deed restricted, you would count on the state's subsidized housing inventory, which would count towards our affordable housing quota. But those above 80% and those that the deed falls off after 15 years would no longer be on that.
Great, thanks.
And Jim, I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but does anything in here specify whether these would be for purchase or for rent? I don't remember that being, when I reviewed it, specifically laid out. Not that that matters, I'm just curious.
I don't believe we require purchase or rent.
It would if it was affordable housing, it would have to be rent, then, correct?
Well,
Oh,
not
no, I guess not, that's true.
necessarily,
That's-
yeah.
Yeah,
But townhouse type,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but the draft talks about two contingencies. One, if it's going to be purchased, and one, if it's going to be rented. So I think that those bases are covered.
Covers both, understood. Okay, thank you.
All right. Continuing along, as I already kind of hinted towards in Section C, all affordable units shall remain affordable for a minimum of 15 years through a use restriction which shall assure this condition. The use restriction shall be structured to survive any and all foreclosures. So again, that's that deed restriction that ends potentially at 15 years. It is set as a minimum, so there could be discussions of increasing that or renewing that perhaps. D, continuing enforcement of use restriction through subsequent resale of affordable units shall be subject of a monitoring agreement. That's kind of a standard form for all deed restrictions we try to get in place. No occupancy permit shall be requested until the affordable dwelling units have been approved by the subsidized housing agency, and evidence of such has been submitted to the town attorney. That's the typical process once you're getting those restrictions in place. Section 2, I would like to identify that in the correspondence with Councilor Ludke, she has requested that Section 2 be struck and removed from this. But if you like, I would like to go through it just so you guys can understand what is in there, and then, but certainly the proposal before you now with the recent correspondence is to remove this section in its entirety. But what's before you here is the affordable units for multifamily affordable housing developments. And really, this is the original section that was in the original multifamily affordable housing district. And again, what the end result was that at 850 Falmouth Road, with some slight changes as you see here. But as is written, Section A, an individual or household with total annual income that does not exceed following percentages of area median income for the town of Barnstable as determined annually by HUD. 1 for purchasers of condominiums, unit 50%, and 2 for the tenant in the rental unit, 50%. So this is, again, this is that special permit criteria, so that allows for multifamily. So we're no longer talking single family and duplexes, we're talking multifamily, and we're talking at a lesser percent. So our inclusionary is 10% at 65%. Now we're talking 100% at 50% AMI here. So that's a much lesser standard than some other, or in the above by right section, and also in our current inclusionary housing. Section B, all affordable units shall remain affordable as defined herein in perpetuity. A use restriction shall assure the condition. The use restriction shall be structured to survive any and all foreclosures. 1 and 2 repeat essentially what was above. The continuing enforcement of the use restriction through subsequent resale. Affordable units shall be subject to the monitoring agreement. The use restriction and the monitoring agreement shall be drafted in compliance with the local initiative program, which is a state program, and the guidelines promulgated. The use restriction and monitoring agreement shall be subject to review of the planning board as approved as to form of the town attorney's office prior to the issuance of a building permit. Next section, the affordable units shall conform to all, and really all we did was clean up, as you guys all know, it used to be the Department of Housing and Community Development, and now they've changed to Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. The standards must be met to qualify these units for inclusion of the subsidized housing inventory, as Mr. Twist mentioned. A right of first refusal upon the transfer of such affordable units shall be granted to the town or its designee for a period of not less than 120 days after notice. Affordable units shall not be segregated within the district. The affordable units shall satisfy design, construction standards, as you guys are very familiar with in terms of those inclusionary standards and making sure that they meet similar standards to that of the market rate. Here it's struck and left as a reserve. The units shall obtain occupancy permits issued at a rate. There was a specific rate, but now that we're talking 100% affordable, it didn't meet the requirements there, so that was struck. 7, in computing the number of required affordable units, any fraction. So again, we're talking about 100%, so that doesn't necessarily need to be in place if necessary. The standard is not subject to a variance. No occupancy permit shall be requested until the affordable dwelling units have been approved by EOHLC as eligible. That should be the EOHLC subsidized housing inventory under the LIP guidelines. Then it goes on to the decision standards. So this would be, again, this is for the multifamily affordable, so the special permit. So this is giving guidance for if you were to consider that special permit. But as I remind you, this is requested to be struck. And same thing with as it continues down in relation to other requirements. And then there are definitions here that shall remain. These definitions we add in duplex, just defining what a duplex is, that use restriction that we recite earlier, and just spelling that out for that special permit. But again, that special permit criteria is requested to be struck. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, happy to walk through the process or anything else you may have.
Great. That was excellent. Good to walk through step by step and look at the full document. I think we'll start with some questions, comments from initial reaction from the board. Certainly we'll give Councilor Lutke a chance to speak if she would like. I know that 577 Falmouth Road is owned by Jake Dewey, and I know Jake has a project in mind. Certainly, we're not here to discuss any of the specifics of that project, but certainly if there are questions, comments for Jake, we would welcome that as well. Just like to make this kind of an open discussion, and then we'll also welcome comments from the public. I just wanted to start with a couple questions. 577 Falmouth Road, that lot is currently undeveloped, and that is the one owned by Jake Dewey?
That is correct, and I just pulled up the map.
Perfect.
So that everyone can see there. The 577 Falmouth Road, right here, essentially at the corner of Pitcher's Way, though there is a lot in between that end and the corner of Pitcher's Way. The Barnstable Adult Community Center, this is the big lot with the structure already on it, and this is the smaller lot, and I can speak for the process that we looked at for the master plan for the Barnstable Adult Community Center. There was consideration of maybe some small development in this location. I think the thought of including this one was because there was thought of accessing whatever the town so chose to move forward with here through this location, so not to add another curb cut on the 28 or to interrupt the neighborhood back there. So that's my understanding. That's why the inclusion of this lot was to entertain access there. And then obviously 850 Falmouth Road is right there, the existing district.
And is that all, is number one all one lot now? Is that triangle considered a separate lot parcel?
I believe we still
I
show
can't
it
remember.
as two lots.
Okay.
We still show it as two lots in assessing.
But here, it's all listed as 850 Falmouth Road.
Correct. It's one address.
Understood. And 825 is the senior center?
Correct.
Okay. And 767 is,
Number three,
Number
which
three.
is town-owned property that directly abuts the senior center and has a little bit of the parking lot maybe on it as well.
that was my next question, is Lot 3, is it completely undeveloped or it has some of the parking lot?
It might have a slight bit of parking lot, but for the most part, it's a wooded lot.
Understood. Okay. Can you tell me about 720 Falmouth Road, directly abutting 577? Is that, I know it is considered Sea Meadow Village, is that the right name?
Oh, right, this direction? right
Yeah,
here?
I'm just curious, what is that? Was that a 40B?
I believe that was a comprehensive permit, and it is multifamily at that location.
Understood, thank you. Let's see. Initially, one of the things that I thought about that was slightly concerning was just the, can you pull up the red line again, if you don't mind, go to section H, solar. Certainly when discussing battery storage, it's not something that has been prevalent in the town. It's not something that I feel the town has fully wrapped their heads around. So certainly any battery system that's 5 to 10 kilowatt is not going to be a big deal in my mind. I would consider that to be residential use, but the words "or larger" make me a little bit hesitant. I would like for there to be an upper threshold that limits the size, simply due to the fact that we don't have any commercial scale battery storage that I'm aware of. So that was one initial thought. I was curious, and possibly we could hear from Jake about what the possibility would be to potentially extend the 15-year term to 20. I don't know kind of where that came from, so I did want to hear a little bit about that. Let's see. And last, I just wanted to commend Councilor Lutke. I think that one of the things that this board has talked about before is that missing middle, and the fact that market rate is so darn expensive, and it's very difficult for working families on the Cape to find an apartment they can afford. And this, is kind of a unique, out-of-the-box, creative way to identify ways to help those families find places to live. So I just wanted to commend you, Councilor Lucky. I think that this was a great concept, a great idea, and I'm happy that we are considering it. I also do agree with striking Section 2. I like the simplification in doing that, leaving it to the single-family duplex style. So yeah, that was my kind of initial questions and comments. Matt, you have some initial thoughts at the moment? Any questions?
I guess I'll just throw this out there as kind of a general food for thought, but I'm not sure how this doesn't qualify as spot zoning. And I would be happier if this district was more contiguous in a given zone, so everyone could benefit, or more people could benefit from the relaxed zoning that we're looking at here tonight. I do have a serious issue with the 15-year limitation. Every affordable housing project I've been involved in and developed and otherwise has had a perpetual requirement. Yeah, I would feel better if it wasn't just like piecemeal lots around town. I just don't like anything about it. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Matt. Mary, questions?
Not
initial?
at this time.
No?
Thanks.
Okay. Bob, anything at this time?
Yeah, I got a few. Jim, if you could pull up on the screen that section A you referenced that's going to be stricken.
You mean section 2?
2A?
Whatever it was that was going to be stricken.
Two.
Yeah. Because when I was reading it, it was in there, so I'm
Yep.
trying to figure out what's coming out. Okay, so as I understand, what the proposal then is just simply to take out the 50% cap on purchases of condominiums or rental of condominiums. Is that right?
So it would go above that, above and beyond that. So what the proposal here is, so if you go back up to the purpose,
Yeah.
the purpose of this section was to authorize originally by special permit privately initiated affordable housing, which ultimately lends to, which was allowed for multifamily affordable housing at a lower level. What we're looking to do here would be to add that by right, so adding the single and duplexes, and now remove that special permit option. So you're essentially removing the original multifamily option that was allowed for, and removing it all in its entirety. So we're now restructuring it for just the by right for single family and duplexes. So
But there would be no income limitation, as I understand it, if you strike the 50% cap.
you would, so we're inserting in the principal permitted uses.
Yeah.
So if this section, we're now talking 10% at 70% area median income and 90% at 70 to 100. So
Right.
we're getting rid of, in its entirety as proposed, this section here. So everything on down into the next page. So we're talking about, yes, the 50% in perpetuity. We're talking about multifamily in general, and what the associated items that go with the special permit.
So the bottom line is everything fits into 2 pots instead of 3 pots.
Exactly.
Okay. So, it talks in a number of places about the area median income. Do we know what the current area median income is for Barnstable?
Yes, and I believe we should be getting new numbers. They normally come in early spring. For a family of 4, I think for 80%, it's somewhere in the low 90s, I want to say. I haven't looked at it in a little bit, but I can get you those numbers.
Okay. Just before I came in, I went online and Googled it. So I can't vouch for the accuracy, but 2 different websites told me 97,348 as of December 31st, 2023,
Okay.
which is, about a year old.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it likely has gone up slightly since then.
That's my guess.
Typically increases.
So, with regard to the 90% for single-family and/or duplexes, 90% can go up as high as 100% of that figure.
That's correct.
So we could have 90% of the residences going to people who make $100,000 a year. Is that figure maybe not too high?
So I will say there is certainly a need in the community for, as the chairman mentioned, that workforce housing. So for those individuals that are making $100,000 a year, if you look at the market right now, to get market rate housing, there's not a lot of options for those individuals making that. And so I think there is a market for, or a need, for the 70 to 100, whether the board believes that we should be prioritizing it now and at this location. That's for you all to discuss. But there certainly is a need for workforce housing in this range.
I agree completely, and I don't have any problem with it being 90%. My only question is if, when you look at the market, particularly for the last 5 years in Barnstable and other places on Cape Cod, if 90% of the units can be sold for $100,000, or to people making $100,000, 100% of those 90% are going to be sold to people who make $100,000. You know, the people who make $75,000 are going to get, you know, aced out of the market, except for the 10%. And the 10% is less than what we have today. You know, you might recall we have 18% currently on the books, which came from the 850 Falmouth Road development several years ago from that negotiation. I'm not arguing against it. I'm just kind of raising it as an issue out there. I haven't looked lately. I think 2 years ago, you made some contacts for me, like with the school department. And as I recall, at that time, a first-year teacher in Barnstable High School made $51,000 and change. You know, a first-year teacher can't pay, you know, can't compete in this range. I haven't looked lately at the first-year entry police officer or fireman, fireperson, firefighter, I should say. My guess that they're not making $97,000, you know, to start. And my only question, just for us to think about more than anything else, is accepting the fact that it's appropriate to have 90% in a range above 70, how high should that range go? Yeah, so that's not something, as far as I'm concerned, we have to resolve, you know, tonight, so.
And actually,
What's
can I
the-
just
yeah.
put one thing in? I think it's household income, right? So it's potentially two, you know,
Two income earners.
two income earners
Yeah.
with a cap at 100. So if there's two people, it's, you know, well, 50-50, you know.
Yeah, but a lot of households on one person.
True.
Yeah. I have a household with two members, a generation younger than myself. Add their two salaries together, they work full-time. They don't make 100 between. Okay? Now, they don't have PhDs. You know, they do blue-collar work. Well, one does white-collar and one does blue-collar. $97,000 is a lot of money, you know, for a young person without a professional degree, not a lawyer, doctor, or whatever. And what we've seen in some of the other developments over the years is we try to develop workforce housing. And sometimes we develop workforce housing, but the only people who can afford it in the workforce are surgeons. You know, and, you know, that's not what we're talking about here by a long stretch of the imagination. But it just strikes me as a tad high. Let me go back to the 15 years that Matt, I think a couple of people have raised. Why 15 years? Why not in perpetuity?
So as I mentioned earlier, in full transparency, this is modeled after the Commonwealth Builder Program at the state level, and that's their requirements is the lesser restriction.
Yeah.
Essentially, you know, purchasing an asset and retaining it for 15 years, and then at that time you have an opportunity to, you know, add some equity to your
Right.
purchase.
What happens to the people who move in there during the 15-year period? Maybe on day one, maybe on year 14, and the clock strikes 15 years. What happens to those folks
Jim,
when the restriction gets lifted?
Can I mention something that just is one thing that I liked about this is your points about entry level are spot on, absolutely spot on. What I found though is that once you get rolling in one of those careers, you can earn good money. I know a lot of firefighters and policemen well over 100K, especially with overtime and even straight pay. And teachers, I've been shocked to learn in year 3, 4, 5, 6 in the 90s, you know? So that was one thing that I liked about this is I thought that it was an opportunity for somebody to get their foot in the door, and then when that 15 years is up, they're good. So, but that actually just brought up a question, and I'm sorry to take your time. If somebody qualifies for an affordable unit and moves in, and then their income exceeds the standards, do they get kicked out?
I don't believe for sale, rental has to be certified annually.
Annually?
Yes.
Okay, so they may, yeah, understood. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Bob.
That's right. Going back to your comment, the flip side of that coin is not the fact that maybe the person is now a detective sergeant and makes enough money to move in, but at 15 years, that unit can go on the market, and it's going to be a market rate. It's not going to be workforce housing. And the detective lieutenant who can afford to pay it because he or she is making $98,000 is now competing against people who are looking at houses $750,000, $850,000, $950,000. And the market force, as we've seen, has been driving those up. So again, nothing we have to resolve, but it's just something that struck me about the 15 years. It is extremely unusual for the 15 years. I don't know anything about the model that you described. I do know that there is a federal tax credit for affordable housing, which if you play your cards right, you can finance 100% of your construction costs with federal tax credits. It expires after 15 years. It creates a real problem. I'd hate to see someone coming in here, and I don't, who the builder is not material, but I'd hate to see any builder take advantage of some of the programs that are available for affordable housing, get a huge amount of the construction costs paid for federal tax credits, and then after a certain period of time, 15 years, 10 years, whatever you want to put in there, that all goes away and it's on the market. And the person who built the house didn't essentially put anything into it if they played their cards right. So, again, nothing we need to resolve. I think that is the only things, well, the one I mentioned to you earlier. I'd really hate to go through all this and not make any progress on our goal towards affordable housing. And what I'm looking at is, based on what you indicated, the vast bulk of these are not going to qualify because they're going to be above 80, and some of them are going to be, not in perpetuity. So, thanks.
Bob, that was great. Yeah, great questions, great discussion. One thing I wrote down while Bob was talking was, could you further segment the affordable requirements? Could you further break them out to make sure that that upper 90% isn't all at 100%, like Bob mentioned, because that's 90%, it's a big chunk. And could you do that in a way that would help us get to our goals? So, well said. Tim?
Thank you. I have just a few technical questions on the language in the zoning amendment. And I guess I just kind of generally want to know how much of this is kind of, lifted from the state, and, what's a requirement, or is it required to be in the zoning for this district? Or, because I know we model some other zoning things and it's kind of like the exact language. Or, what parameters are, I think specified from the state? Is it the unit count? Is it the, AMI? Is the solar? I also am just a little confused on how the solar is, how does that become a zoning requirement? How, is that a state mandate?
Yep, so you're right on a number of those. So density requirements is one of them. So I believe it's a minimum of 15 units to qualify for that type of program. Solar is not one of them. I believe Councilor Ludke might be able to speak to that more. It's not a state mandate. And then the affordable structure is as defined by that state program. So those are really the two, the number of units and the affordable structure. Otherwise, I believe the rest, obviously the items in black are original, and then the other suggested edits are simply additions such as parking. We wanted to specify specifically in the ordinance. Solar wanted to specify specifically, and the principal permitted use wanted specifically the typology in there.
Okay. And I think all three, actually, I don't know what the base zoning is on 850, but are all of these in the RB residential district for their base as of now?
Yeah, single-family zoning.
Okay. And I think there's also a wellhead protection district over there, too. So that means they're also up against lot coverage in that?
Yes, I know there is it's in the WP for at least one of them. But if you're in the WP, the overlay district, yes, 50% of the lot needs to be impervious.
Needs to be
Or
impervious.
impervious.
Impervious,
Or
okay.
both, I guess.
Well,
It's
pervi-
50-50.
Sorry, pervious. In the RB district, I think that had front yard setbacks at 20, it was a 10 inside. So the base residential district is 20 front, 10 sides?
Yes, at a minimum, might be a little bit more than that. The original base district was, obviously, as you see, in 850 Falmouth Road, much more than what is proposed here.
Yeah, so 850, which was the
Original.
original affordable housing district, but these other lots are coming from an RB district.
Correct.
That had, I think they had 30 front or 20 front and then 10 for the sides and the rear. Okay. That's it. I mean, generally, my thoughts, and I'm really interested to hear public comment and, hear from Councilor Lutke and, from Jake and Dan if they want to speak. Is this a type of project that we haven't quite seen? I mean, recently there's been a very large push to multifamily and some with different affordable structures, and there seems to be a lot of market rate for rent units, especially everything here in Hyannis and that, what do you call that new zoning district, the form-based code, and developers want these 3- and 4-story rental, big, large rentals. We're looking at that project being built behind BJ's, these 3, I don't know if that's 4-story, 3 or 4 stories, these large kind of apartment buildings. So to have something that sounds like it's for ownership or potential rental ownership, and it's kind of at a lesser scale, duplex, and it's in an area in town that is good for development, with the utilities there, and with 28 and is well serviced by our existing infrastructure. It's just something we haven't seen in the past couple of years. It's not the type of large apartment building we've been looking at. It's kind of a different thought, and it's if it's potential ownership, that's also something that we haven't seen recently. I think it came up a little bit on the recent inclusionary housing swap between those projects with that thing behind Taco Bell. Because some of them were for rent, but those type of things were for sale, but they were, the town housing committee wanted the rental units, so there was kind of a swap, but it was also because, well, that's not, the most ideal thing that would have been bought for a deed-restricted affordable program, whereas this is. It'd be interesting to see and hear from Councilor Lucky, and I'd like to kind of find a way to make it work. Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Bob.
Jim, I remembered the question I was going to ask you before. 825 Falmouth, the community center, that property is owned by the town. Is it foreseen that the town's going to eliminate the community center, or is it just going to be whatever be built on the current vacant space south of there?
So absolutely not removing the adult community center. The thought here again is there is it's wooded lot where the number 3 is here on your map. And there is a large access way with parking lot here. The thought was including it so there could be some joint access from essentially 2 to 3. So coming off of 28, as you guys know, there's a lot of curb cuts there. Not ideal to continually add curb cuts, so any way we could manage those in a better way, I think was the thought process there.
Sure. On 2, as we're talking about here, at the northern portion of that parcel adjacent to Falmouth Road, there's a huge solar array that's there that takes up a lot of the space that you can't tell from the outline.
Yep.
Then there's the parking lot for the senior center. I'm assuming that there'd be no plan to eliminate parking for the senior center if we're going to keep the senior center.
Right, not that I'm aware of. I would say, for context purposes, if, let's just say this were to move forward, this zoning were to move forward, and the town decided they would like to pursue some form of development on 3 and using access through 2, That would be a public process, much like we're doing with the Marston's Middle School, where we would engage the neighborhood again. We already started a little bit of that with the master planning initiative. So we've started that process, but it has a long ways to go. And we would engage the public, engage the council, and ultimately, before disposition of land, we would have a development plan in place, understanding exactly where the disturbance would be, where the setbacks would be, where the parking would be, et cetera. So that's still a long ways to go for that site.
Good, thank you.
And actually, just to jump in on one thing, is Lot 3 currently wooded, or is that clear? Isn't there a solar array somewhere near the senior center?
No, I can bring up the aerial if that helps. Probably would be better.
Just to kind of orientate. Oh, okay, yeah, the solar is actually directly in front of the senior center.
That lot that we're referring to as 3. This is potential shared access, or as Bob mentioned, the solar there, maybe there's opportunity there. This is a 2020 aerial, so 850 is not shown there just yet. That's there, and then 577 is here, which is a vacant lot at this time.
Okay. Good with that? Okay, great. Turn to Councilor Lutke, if you'd like to say, make any comments. Certainly been some good discussion and feedback so far, and thank you again for your time for doing this.
Okay, thank you. Betty Lutke, I'm a Barnstable Town Councilor, and my precinct is right in this area. In fact, this is the northernmost portion of my precinct. 28 bounds my precinct, and I have Pitcher's Way on one end and Old Strawberry Hill. So it's the entirety of this, although technically the lot that's privately owned is in another councilor's precinct. I've loved all the discussion. Jim has very nicely presented it. I'll start right out with spot zoning. I will never put my name on spot zoning. So if there's any doubt here that it's spot zoning, then that needs to be remedied, however you see fit. Absolutely will not do it. The reason I don't think it is spot zoning is we've got some private property and some town property, and I would never do this unless I wanted to go forward on the town property. I can't speak for what an individual is going to do. But Jim mentioned the model that I'm looking at is the Commonwealth Builders. And it is home ownership, and it does come at a slightly higher rate. And Mr. Twist, you make a very good point about the subsidized housing inventory. I will contend we will never get to 10%. We're talking what, 5, 6, 7,000 units? It will never happen. And if it does, it just protects us from 40Bs. And I'm so tired of the saturation, and you've mentioned it here, of these giant market rate developments. And there's been a lot of angst in town about that. And the preponderance is here in Hyannis, and of course, I guess technically Barnstable with those behind BJ's. So when I heard about this, I was very excited to have Jim and Karen Nober look at this and come up with something that we could do, both let a private individual and the town do ownership. And duplexes, that idea has been presented by the Cape Cod Commission, that should be maybe a zoning everywhere. I don't support that. I think there's a great need to maintain our single-family neighborhoods. That's something that still is cherished by a lot of folks. You often hear racism associated with it, past practices perhaps, but I don't think any of that's going on right now. And a lot of people have worked their entire lives. We have a very senior population. I guess I'm kind of among it. And that's cherished, and I'm not going to do that. But I thought I could make a gesture here. Along 28, we've mentioned that. It has the infrastructure, it has the utilities. It's a little more dense there. But I don't want to go so dense And that's why I asked Jim to take out the multifamily piece. So that would make the residences at 850 existing non-conforming, which is fine with me because I don't want any more multifamilies there. We've got very nice neighborhoods. I think we have some of the residents here with us. I know I spoke on the phone to a few folks. I don't want to do that, and I won't do it. Jim adequately represented, I won't go lower than 2 parking spaces. We're talking about ownership here. Doesn't necessarily imply that you're a family with 2 adults, but it doesn't disqualify that. And also, if you are putting down roots, you probably have children who are going to live to be at least 16 and older, and they need cars. So for me, an ownership opportunity, you have to have 2 parking spaces. I know we talk about walkable communities, but this is not a walkable area here. So I'm hard over on that. I'm very uncomfortable with the 20 units per acre. I'm much more comfortable with 15. And again, because I'm trying to be sensitive to my residential members there. I think 15 would give you some of the density you need per acre, and it wouldn't crowd it. They've come back to some very small lot lines, but for example, my home, I'm 5 feet from, literally from house to one of my neighbors, 10 feet from the other. I'm 1 foot to the street line, and I'm okay. And, you know, if you can do this responsibly, and again, if this is passed, I want to get with Jim, and I want to move out smartly for the town, and I want some ownership. And what is the sweet spot? Mr. Twist, beautiful comments. What is that sweet spot? Because I do want to work with our firefighters, our school teachers. I want to get in there. And then, you know, Steve, you make some good points too. You know, people hustle, and, you know, there's 2 people working, Tim, right? So a lot of good discussion here. So that's my motivation. Duplexes, absolutely. I don't want anything more than duplexes. I wanted to maintain that residential, but with a little bit more density. So you guys have the expertise. That's why you're the planning board. I just worked with Jim to sponsor this and get it to you because I thought it was important. It is a new concept, and let's see what we can do here, and then maybe we can apply it somewhere else. So, and I'll go back to where I started. Spot zoning, you know, heck no, don't let it be spot zoning. So let's please look at that very carefully, and I'm anxious to hear from the other folks here. And I think that's, as I say, really good questions, really good. So you covered a lot of it. And again, the Commonwealth Builders, I think there's, that's the other thing is, I like the ownership, I like the Commonwealth Builders, because why shouldn't people be able to do like most of us have done, is build equity in a home and maybe sell it. And this encourages people to stay here, to raise a family, be part of the community. And why couldn't they then maybe, you know, better themselves, better their children? I don't have a problem. That's why I kind of like this. It's a new program that the state has put out, and I kind of like it, you know. And we're doing this. This is tiny. This is baby steps, and it's a niche, and I hope we can make it work absolutely legally. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. That was excellent. Really great to get some of the background and insight into this. It is interesting to and great to hear that it would be a focus on home ownership. I think that's wonderful. Welcome.
Hi.
All right, come on down. Just state your name for the record.
My name is Peg Holmes, and I live at 39 Marks Path, which abuts the senior center. So I am going to talk about 767. I don't know what's going on with the other property or anything like that, but I was not aware that you were looking at housing, so I was not at the meeting in June. But the meeting in June had 4 presentations for the property that you're talking about. One of the presentations included a duplex, and in that it was 5 buildings or 10 units. What you're proposing here is 3 times that. You're talking about 1.5 acres. They felt that 5 buildings was sufficient. Now you're looking at it as 15 buildings and 30 parking spaces. In the response for the people that did come to the meeting, they were talking about maintaining existing landscaping to the extent as possible and using the landscape as buffers. You're talking about a bush between my property and this. 10 feet that's all it is. And you've got a wooded area that has some mature trees and things like that. You need to have something there. Now, also, in your whole thing, in the beginning, it says, provide for residential development in a manner that is consistent with existing neighborhood developments in terms of density and housing type. I think it's an excellent idea to have the duplex that fits in with the housing type. As far as density, if you're talking about putting in 15 buildings and 30 units, I live on a quiet cul-de-sac with 10 houses. And it was identified in the presentation that the adjacent neighborhood is low density. So now you're going to put in a high density thing. Now, Jim has said, you can change it and you can set it up so it's not something. I just don't understand why you're going to zone it to be so dense if you don't intend to do that. I think that the senior center also wouldn't be very happy having 60 more cars coming through their parking lot on a consistent basis as people live there. As far as the housing thing, I will say, when you're talking about it, I'm a retired teacher, and when I was able to finally buy a condominium, I had to buy it with 2 other people to get the thing. So affordable housing is something that's valuable, and it ends up that you end up with, when you start in teaching and some of these other things, you end up rooming with somebody or getting married and having another income and things like that, so you can afford some of these things. But I really think that maybe the other property would be appropriate for this, but I think you really need to think about the density in terms of that, and the wooded area that's there. Even if you drive down 28, you'll see that most of the things are set back, and there are, as you walk along that sidewalk, there are trees along there. And if you're talking about going to a frontage of 15 feet, you're not going to have a wooded area there and things like that. You really need to think about the neighborhood that you're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, especially your insight, living, so close to the area in discussion. So thank you so much. Welcome. Just state your name for the record. Thank you so much for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Laura Schufelt, and as I am a lifelong resident of Barnstable, and I'm also an affordable housing professional. So I have a couple of kind of corrections and just to make sure you have the facts of what we're talking about. I do think this is a prime example of spot zoning. Whether it's for the right reason or the wrong reason, it's spot zoning. The original 850 Falmouth was 100% affordable because it was going to take the affordables from what's now Everly when the LaRusso company was going to be doing the senior. And then it changed to 25%, then it changed to 18%. And now you want to use the same zoning to do 100% at, at various levels. So where do we start? Commonwealth Builders Program. Some misinformation has been given to you about it. No units that are under the Commonwealth Builders Program count for the subsidized housing inventory, even the 70%, because they don't meet the restriction guidelines that the subsidized housing inventory has. At only 10%, that's, 2 or 3 units. It's not a big number, but you should be aware of that. In the ordinance, it says that these units would survive foreclosure. Commonwealth Builders specifically states that they do not survive foreclosure. They have a foreclosure resale formula, but they don't survive foreclosure. So the restriction goes away if it's foreclosed on. The restriction is 30 years for Commonwealth Builders. It's 15 years with a straight affordability income eligibility, like you're used to seeing. Someone at the resale multiplier that's coming in to buy can then afford it at the same level as the buyer got it. So if they paid, if it was set at 70%, then it's sold at 70%, but with the new median income. So there's some appreciation, but it's not a lot. It's not in the last few years. It's a lot, but typically it's not that much. After 15 years, the difference between what would be the affordable price and the selling price, that equity, is split between the town and the buyer. So in year 16, instead of getting the maximum resale price, they get market price, but they split the equity with the town. So the restriction is 30 years, but the affordability eligibility for the next buyer goes away at 15 years, if that makes sense. It's complicated. Let's see. For the Commonwealth Builders, there's a minimum of 10% that have to be at 70%. So that number can be increased, and the rest of them have to be between 70 and 120, actually. But I think you've been hearing 100. The median income right now for Barnstable County is $122,250. But the average wage for the town of Barnstable is $60,400. So that's where, when there's one person income, they can't afford a medium, even an 80% or a 60%. 80% of median is $97,800 for that's for a family of 4, and $79,000 for a family of 2. Let's see. I guess picky things with the ordinance should always be households, not individuals, when you're talking about eligibility. Otherwise, you'd have multiple individuals that were making less than the maximum. There needs to be more descriptive language around monitoring agreements and restriction. And as I said, the restriction should be should mirror, if you're going to make an ordinance that's going to be specific to a program, and that's what this is, and a specific to a proposal, basically, again, spot zoning, then you need to make sure that everything in the ordinance is consistent, and it's not right now. Taking out, it was news to me that taking out the affordable multifamily section, I do think if you're going to use it in other places that, you should allow for multifamily. I guess if you have multiple duplexes on a lot, that's condominiums, that's multifamily. But considering the name of this district is the multifamily affordable housing district, there's not much multifamily, and there's not much affordable housing. I think the definition of affordable is 80% and below. So calling 100% units, they're not affordable, they're income restricted, but they're not affordable. And everywhere in the rest of the ordinances, and with HUD and with the state, affordable is 80% or below. And I think it should be consistent across programs and ordinances. I think, I guess there's, just some questions about who has the authority to not issue an occupancy permit if the affordables aren't, they're not going to be approved because they're not eligible to be approved. So they have to be approved by the Commonwealth Builders Program, if that's the program that this is going to be under. So with that, I would thank you for your time.
Do you mind if I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Are you aware of a density requirement under the Commonwealth Builder Program?
Commonwealth Builders requires 15 units, or, let's see, how does it go? There has to be a minimum of 15 units. So it's not a density requirement, it's a minimum. And then that ties into how many affordables you have to have.
Okay, that makes sense. Very, very much appreciate your insight. Yeah, if anybody else has any questions.
Laura, good to see you. Long
Good to
time.
see you too, yeah.
Just maybe for the edification of the board, kind of going down that Commonwealth Builder Program, are there any dollar incentives to a developer if they were to get disqualified as a starter home zoning district?
Yes.
And how much is that?
$250,000 per unit,
Thank you.
I'll just say with a maximum of 10 million.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Appreciate your insight and expertise. Any other members of the public? Please come forward. Thank you so much. Welcome. If you just state your name for the record. Thanks so
Hi
much.
there, my name is Catherine Finkenstead. I live in West Barnstable. I'm here, I think, like a lot of you, it sounded like, to support the rezoning, specifically of 577 Route 28 Falmouth Road, Pitcher's Way project. The project's been outlined as 100% affordable, and with properties purchased an affordable fee structure, and we seem to be permitting market rate for rent buildings everywhere currently. With the recent notifications about the Starbucks company regarding their plans for the old 7-Eleven lot and the First Church of Christ Scientist lot, there are approximately 758 apartments under construction in Hyannis as a rough estimate. That does not account for the 4 buildings coming our way on Wilkins, which is the big building behind BJ's. This is likely an underestimate. Of those, it seems like a very small percent will be affordable. In the 58-unit proposal from the Starbucks company, only 6 will be affordable units, as it's been reported. We will easily be at 1,000 market rate apartments shortly, at a time when the economy is questionable, and more importantly, everyone is talking about the need for affordable housing. This, at 577 Route 28, is affordable housing, which, if anything, is a valued social commodity, and rezoning should be permitted for that fact alone. No 5-unit market price, 3 units affordable. This is 100% affordable, however you may define the medians and so on. If this is not permitted, then what solutions are being offered to gain more affordable housing? Surely building more apartment buildings with high market rates and limited affordable units is not the answer. The danger for this lot, if its rezoning is not permitted, is some 40B entity will come and build more non-affordable housing, which we're seeing everywhere. We have way too much 40B development happening here already. Ironically, the one developer coming to the table to address affordable housing is a local. Allow a local developer to address the urgent need of creating affordable housing that is aesthetically attuned to this environment. We need this project and more like it. And I do feel that any developer willing to undertake affordable housing, I don't feel it's a black mark against their record if they are making money in order to build affordable housing, which we need. So thank you.
Yeah, great comments. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming down. If anybody else would like to speak, come on down to the microphone. Welcome, welcome. State your name for the record.
Hi, it's Eric Schwab from Hyannis. I live down the road about a mile from this area. It's spot zoning. I mean, you can call it something else, but it's spot zoning. Okay, so let's keep that on the table. 850 was spot zoning, and the dimensions, the worst part of 850, you're now trying to spread around the neighborhood with these ridiculous setbacks that are just not wide enough. It may have been in the 80s at town meeting, the residents of Barnstable asked for 300 feet on either side of 28. And that's still on the books, 300 feet. The only way you got around it at 850 is you created this artificial spot zoning district. Stewie's Sea Meadow was 40B. That's how he got around it. And now you're just trying to spread 850 around to avoid the 300 feet setback requirement in front of 28. Okay, that said, I think the builder for 577 has been very responsible. The setbacks he's asked for are actually less than what's in here on the table. So, I don't know why you're creating the potential for a really negative housing experience being 15 feet from Route 28. I mean, that's not going to go well, okay? Also, Mark's Path, it's going to be overwhelmed if you use these setbacks. It's going to be overwhelmed. I was at the senior center, the adult center meetings. There were several meetings about the what to do with that vacant piece of land. And the residents, myself included, want to keep it wooded. We want that area wooded. But what really came out to me, what struck me at that adult center meeting was that we don't have a plan for the neighborhood. Nothing, right? We're just lurching from one opportunity to another, much like we are downtown Hyannis. And I didn't want our neighborhood, to be like downtown Hyannis. So I started going to the LCPC. I brought maybe 20 people there to speak about what we wanted for West Hyannis. And what we want for West Hyannis isn't spot zoning. What we want for West Hyannis is a plan. Let's consider the area in its totality. Let's consider the fact that the DPW has 5 projects to improve roads, add bike paths, add sidewalks. None of them are funded. None of them are prioritized. And they probably shouldn't be because there's no plan for the whole area. So if you want to win on affordable housing, peel off 577 and approve that. All the rest of it, particularly the area around Mark's Path, that needs to be better planned. That needs to be thought out. We can bring people from the neighborhood. We can share our thinking as we did before the LCPC, and then you can make a decision. I mean, right now, no one knows you're doing this, right? I mean, the room is not exactly full with residents, right? Because no one understands what you're doing. You're sort of slipping this through in the dark of the night.
We notice every single one of our meetings.
I know you do,
yeah.
but no, how many people read it? I mean, come on. No, you
still
do a
do.
really good job
I appreciate that.
of getting people there, but something like this, people don't understand the full ramifications of what's going to happen. Because once you bundle these 4 properties together, once you spot zone these properties together, whatever you want to call it, any builder 50 feet down the road or half a mile down the road can say, oh, I want to join that district over there that has 15-foot setback. And there's really nothing you can do to stop them, isn't that right?
Well, we'd have to amend the zoning.
To include the property.
Right. That would have to take place. It wouldn't be by right.
It wouldn't be by right. Okay, just wait till the Cape Cod Commission hears you say that. No, honestly, this is premature. If you're in a hurry to build, take 577, approve that. All the rest of it, you have to throw back to public comment. It's just not ready. And there is an initiative underway as part of the LCPC to talk about this area. So let's do that. Let's talk about it. Let's come up with a plan that everyone in the neighborhood agrees with. Thank you very much.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Anybody else from the public want to speak? Jake, would love to hear from you. Thanks for coming down. Appreciate you being here. Just state your name for the record.
Jake Dewey, owner of 577. First, I just want to thank Betty for not just this, but just looking at housing, talking about housing, bring it to you guys. And I really hope we can get to yes here. The numbers that have been talked about, there is flexibility. What do we need? What is the most important? As Ms. Schufeld said, I think we can go up to 110 or 120? 120% AMI. The subsidy that helps get the price point there, it does start to go down, but it doesn't mean we can't go there. It's just a matter of making the numbers work. I can't speak to the other parcels. I can only speak to mine, but yes, the intent there is 100% home ownership. If longer deed restriction is more palatable, that's, that could be, we can go that way. Councilor Ludke had said that she felt 15 was a appropriate time, and that is the guidelines of the Commonwealth Builder Program. And to Mr. Teague's point, yes, there is a subsidy there. It is limited based on what we need to hit the numbers and make it work. It's not just I'm just going to get money in my pocket sort of situation. It's to make those numbers work. It's very closely monitored by the state. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Dan Osler from Down Cape's here. He sort of helped us draw our initial plans.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate that information, some background. Again, the specific project that is Jake is considering 4577, not for us to get into the nitty gritty of that, but of course, any questions for Jake, any comments, anything like that, certainly. Matt, anything?
No, I think if we're going to create a zoning district that allows the Commonwealth Builder Program here, that it should be bigger, period. And I commend you guys for putting this forward, but it's a little self-serving. I don't want to, because it only affects you, right? And then we wipe away the zoning for 850 like it never existed, right? 858, what is it, 825, 850? That was for sale. Anyone know what it was for sale for? Anyone have any?
Oh, the finished
Before it was
development?
developed,
Yeah,
or
850, no, now. It was just on the commercial Wall
It
Street.
was on LoopNet like a
Yeah.
couple months ago.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know the exact number. It was north of 20 million. So there's some incentive to do this properly. And if that sort of eligibility is going to extend to one parcel in the senior center, then let's make it run from Bursa's Way to Pitcher's Way, right? 500 feet back and create the opportunity to do something, but not just drop it on one lot, right? I mean, because the other thing I would say is I want to add 291 Flint Street to the zoning district, right? Because I could build 5 times as many houses on these lots we just did an A&R plan for. And if I would have plopped it on there, this guy, first he'd book a vacation, right? Second, he'd be thrilled and it would solve the problem. So you can't just go and henpeck the issue. And I do like the location you guys are at, but if we're going to do it, let's do it. Let's make a realistic district that applies to the Commonwealth Builder standard, that starter home zoning district, and let's do it. But to just do this and then negate the 850 zoning, and we don't have multifamily, it makes zoning look like a joke to me, and it's not. I mean, it has long-term impacts, and you're trying to get something done, and everybody has needs in the town. But to do it in one spot, I just think it's silly. That's my 2 cents.
We always appreciate your 2 cents and insight. Thank you. Mary, anything for Jake? All set. Bob, anything?
Just a couple things. Jake, good to see you.
Good to see you, Bob.
About the only comment I have on this right now is, we've had all this discussion about this Commonwealth Builders thing, which I have to tell you, I know absolutely nothing about whatsoever. But what I do know is we shouldn't be tying ourselves to the Commonwealth Builders proposal. I mean, this is the Town of Barnstable ordinance, proposed ordinance. We should be doing what we think is appropriate, and it may agree with this proposal I've never read, or it may not agree with the proposal I've never read. But we shouldn't just adopt these things because some guy, a group of people wrote a model code and says this should be good for everybody. Well, it may or may not be good for us. So I think we should keep that in mind.
Yeah. Thank you. Bob? Sorry, Tim, anything?
What is allowed in the base residential district for special permitted uses? Is there multifamily or is there affordable options allowed under special permit uses?
I don't believe in this district. I could pull it up real quick if you like.
Let's take a look. Might as well.
So this is for anybody at home can see this as well. So we're in the RB district. So if you go back to the town's website and we go to our lovely E-code. We have many districts, but the RB is one of our first. It brings you to principal permitted uses, single family. Now, you can also, for accessory uses, keep stable horses. Conditional uses, there are some renting rooms, no more than 6 lodgers, public or private golf courses, again, keeping horses. Bed and breakfast, and then open space residential developments, which is a very specific type of subdivision, basically.
Open space.
Yeah, that's a, called the-
Yeah, cluster subdivision.
Cluster
Yeah,
development, you like.
Okay.
10% affordable, I think it used to be. I don't know
10%
what it is now.
affordable, you put 3 acres into conservation, you can develop on 1 acre. Is that another subsection of the zoning? You know, is,
Yeah, it is. And then also, just from your earlier question, the current setbacks, front 20, side 10, rear 10, 30 as the height. And again, but this is for a single family as the by right.
for a single family, and then there's a little footnote saying 100 along routes 28
So
and
that's that,
132.
what one of the individuals mentioned was 100-foot setback on our 2 main corridors. That's that footnote there that I know the zoning board is currently struggling with at the moment.
Okay.
100.
I'm just thinking, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I kind of agree with Matt. I mean, as this is kind of going on, but, you know, when it first came up, I'm like, why just this 3 lots? I mean, this is something that, I mean, I've been talking about on this board for, you know, years now of, you know, what's out there for starter home? What's out there for the new state chapter 40Y thing? What's, you know, we need to have something else besides just build vinyl sided apartment buildings at 3 stories and put market rate units out there. There needs to be some path to develop a different type of affordable housing and something that's not rental. And again, and I'm also like Bob here, I don't know anything about this Commonwealth Builder Program. But it sounds like, you know, a state incentivized development program to help developers like Jake or whoever else, you know, to come up with projects like this. And there's a need for it in this town, you know, and I don't know if it necessarily means that we have to be looking at these 3 specific lots. I mean, you know, do we look at an area from, you know, from Pitchers to Bierce's? You know, do we look at other potential areas in town? Do we look at it as maybe I don't know, what's that footnote for the cluster developments? Is it a base thing we can put into the zoning that we can allow in a few different residential districts if it hits a certain acreage? You know, what's a way to put a program like this or something like this that's obtainable? And, you know, not necessarily just take something that was, I hate to say it, spot zoned and add a couple more lots to it to make it less of a spot zone, but still, I mean, we're talking about individual lots here in a zoning district. So I'm just generally, it's something that is really interesting. I just don't know what is the best avenue to get there.
Yeah, great way to sum it up. Bob, you have something?
Yeah. Can we let Jake sit down?
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I just want to go back to something Mr. Schwab mentioned earlier in his comments. You know, this is, you know, frequently we have matters that come before us that are also within the jurisdiction of other town boards and commissions. And specifically, this is one that is, I think, flies right into the wheelhouse of the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee. As you know, we've been working now for almost 3 years to develop the plan, and it's out for public comment on the first draft currently. But among the things that have been discussed in all the public meetings in the LCPC is what areas in town do we need to pay specific attention to? They're definable geographical areas where we need to look at it separately than goals and strategies for the town as a whole. And one of those areas that's received a great deal of discussion is the area which I think on the LCPC we refer to the West End area, which Mr. Schwab referred to today as West Hyannis. We're talking about the same area.
It's West End Neighborhood District.
Yeah. And part of the issue in there is, should we develop as part of the long-term comprehensive plan, a program to engage in a master plan for this specific geographical area? And if we do, what should be the scope of the geographical area within the plan? And there's no, as far as I know, no agreement as to what that area should be, but it has been proposed that that area should go from the West End traffic circle to the intersection of West Main and Route 28, and one house lot or business lot north of 28, and one house lot or business lot south of West Main. The idea being that no matter what happens on the peripheral roads, Route 28 or West Main, it affects everything that happens and everybody who lives in between those two streets. And everything that happens in the middle of those two streets affects West Main and Falmouth Road. If we're talking about putting 66 housing units in here in a fairly compact geographical area, we'd be adding a lot of traffic every day onto one of the most heavily impacted traffic roads in our town, which is not a suggestion that we shouldn't put 66 units in that area, but we have to keep that open. Where we are now is we're looking at recommending an amendment to the zoning ordinance, which effectively takes this whole issue out of the long-term comprehensive planning project's purview, because the zoning will have been changed before the comprehensive plan is enacted. So I think we need to be somewhat careful as we go in and make these widespread changes in terms of what goes in that area, going from single family on an acre of land to, what, 20 or 22 units on an acre of land. So I'm somewhat concerned about that. I'm also concerned about this 15-foot setback from Falmouth Road. You know, if on my street or a street like my street, which is very low density, if you were to put, you know, a group of houses 15 feet setback from my street and required the parking to be behind it, it would be reasonably attractive. It wouldn't bother anyone. The traffic would not bother the people in the house. I can tell you, if I was living in a townhouse or a condo or a duplex, call it what you want, 15 feet from Falmouth Road, the noise, the air pollution, that's horrible, frankly. So I'm not in favor of a 15-foot setback from Falmouth Road. I don't have an objection to 15-foot setbacks from the next house. I've lived in places where the next house has been my side wall, 10 feet from the side wall of the other house. It's perfectly doable, but not fronting on Falmouth Road. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot to think about here. I suggest that we take a 5-minute recess. One more public comment first. Mr. Ojala, welcome. All right, just state your name for the record.
Sure, I'll be brief. Dan Ojala, I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Downcape Engineering in Yarmouthport, and familiar with the area. I remember, I don't know if it's 20 or 25 years ago, we did the PIOD overlay, and that only affected a couple parcels north of here. It was Settlers Landing and Schooner Village, and with Jacques Morin, who was a town councilor not long before that project. And he did a nice job with them. They came out beautifully. It was 50 units on one, 30 on another. In my opinion, didn't affect the traffic patterns very much, and a little bit north of here. But it shared some key components that they were on town sewer, so you could handle the density, and they laid out pretty nicely. The lot that Jake and I are looking at is a long, thin lot. It lays out pretty nicely to have a central parking and a row of buildings on either side. So where in a lot of times if you had a more oddly shaped lot, you wouldn't get a density that seems to fit in there fairly nicely. So it just lays out well. You might consider tying the short setback to no access on Route 28. If you're going to have it be a building be close to the road, you wouldn't want a curb cut right beside it, I would think. in our case, would probably have a fire lane there, but no egress. And if you wanted to make the setback a little bit bigger, that probably wouldn't be unreasonable. I like the solar aspect of it. I think with the cost of electricity being among the highest in the nation, it's prudent to do that. The parking is, I think, modest for the cars and the maneuverability. Everybody's got power steering these days. The parking regulations were written many, many, many years ago, and I think that's not unreasonable. When you have a shorter bay width, to have the spaces be a little bit wider never hurts. So sometimes I recommend a 9.5 or a 10-foot wide space if you're shortening the bay up, but the arrangement that's in there I think is pretty good. And I just, it seems to me that with the town council form of government, we're pretty nimble in changing zoning, so if you look at this area, there's not that many vacant parcels. I think Jim and the crew did a pretty good job of selecting some that were reasonable in the area. They're making that one small zone bigger. I don't think spot zoning is really a problem unless somebody appeals it. It's in my opinion, I've heard that it's not it's harder to test that than it used to be. If someone else comes forward and makes a good concerted effort to say that my project could be expanded, I think this board and the town council can, pretty easily, it's not like we have to go to town meeting in the spring or something like that. You can get it done and adjust. And then if the local comprehensive plan suggests many more pieces, we could certainly look at it. But I think we're pretty nimble right now. Remember, the PIAD went right through many other of these smaller zonings. We talk about them, negotiated, and they go through pretty well in this town. So I don't think it's unreasonable. I think it would be, my son and daughter, it's very hard to find housing, even though they get good money. It's just almost impossible to buy a home. I think the ADU regulations help a little bit, but this is one where the housing that Jake develops tends to be affordable no matter what. Even the market would be down. And I'd remind the board too that if you do a straight 40B, which I've done a lot of them, you only get 25% affordable, and that's at 80%. And so here you're 100% affordable. And so there's got to be, it would seem to me that there should be some good common ground, and it's a nice opportunity for some people, like firefighters with a family. They're going to make close to 100. They are. That could afford a nice condominium on the Cape and a few minutes from the station. So I think there's a lot of positives, and I'd hope you consider it carefully. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Anybody else for public comment at this time? I think we've heard from everybody. So if it's okay with the board, take a 5-minute recess. Right with that? Okay, 5-minute recess. Thank you.
time we got them to start talking about these plans as a whole. And then hoping for is that
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order, continue our discussion, zoning amendment. Jim, I wanted to just clarify one thing. Majority of members present or majority of the board? So with 5 here, would we be looking at 4 or 3?
Majority of members present.
Roger that. Thank you very much. So some great comments from the public, great discussion all around, bringing up some very good points. You know, this is a tough one. You know, I'm definitely, it's you know, there's a lot of positives, but there's a lot of challenges. Personally, I see us with kind of 2 paths before us. Path number 1 would be to continue this and ask the parties to go to work and see if some adjustments can be made to appease some of the concerns. I'll list off the concerns that if we were to continue, that I would like to see us discuss. One, like I mentioned, some sort of upper threshold, a max on allowable battery storage, a longer deed restriction over the 15 years, more diverse and appealing affordable categories, that kind of limiting that upper end and trying to get more of that middle. Seeing if density could be reduced down, potentially to the minimum required under the Commonwealth Builder Program, to reduce the impact on neighbors, setbacks, side setbacks adjusted. I do personally like the idea of no access on 28, but, you know, obviously we've heard from the neighbors, and that is something that we need to pay attention to. And the last thing, just something that I just wonder out loud, is whether or not the parcel that abuts Mark's path is just removed from consideration. So anyways, that's just some of the things that I'm thinking about. I know Mr. Dewey has the option of 40B. You know, 40B, some people love them, some people hate them. It's the type of thing where I always say that I feel the town has more control if it's not a 40B, a bit more of a part to play, I guess. So anyways, that to me, that's path 1, is continue it, let the parties go back to work and see if we can make it a little bit more palatable. Option 2 is simply to kind of turn it back to the planning department and the council and the LCP to take a more holistic approach to the area, to the neighborhood, and go that route. So personally, what I would like to see happen is us to continue it and find a way to make it work. You know, Matt, you said some really, really good points. The only one that I disagree with is the one where you mentioned that Jake is the only one that would benefit. I mean, I disagree just because I know how many families would benefit, and I like to, you know, roll up my sleeves, even if it is a little bit unique, and see if something can be done to help get families into homes. And the fact that this would be home ownership, you know, one thought that I had was somebody could buy this under the affordable requirements, and then after the 15 years, they could sell it and make some money and go buy their second home, possibly, you know, a single-family home somewhere in town. It just, to me, that's a very appealing path, but there's a lot of challenges with this, no doubt about it. So I appreciate all the comments from the board. So anyways, those are kind of the 2 paths. Let's just go through the board, and if I missed a path, if there's another route you think we should take, just a open discussion about what we should do here. Matt?
I would be in favor of it were they to reinstate the multifamily provisions, that paragraph 2 we took out, leave that as an option under special permit, and we expanded the district beyond just these handful of lots.
Sure. Appreciate that. Mary?
I think the 2 paths that you had laid out is the way we need to go, and just make some modifications as we go.
Understood. Okay, continue it and try to go to work.
Exactly.
All right, Bob, thoughts on a path forward here?
Yeah, thank you. You know, for the most part of the proposal, you know, I like it. I agree with it. There's just those couple of areas we've talked about that I think maybe could use some fine tuning. So as I understand your suggestion, path number one is to set it back to staff to work with the parties and come back in a reasonably short period of time to see if we can deal with.
For next
some of
meeting,
this.
yeah.
My concern about the 15 years, I probably didn't articulate this as well as I should have, but, you know, the 15 years come, and using your example, Mr. Chair, it's, first of all, it's a purchase, let's assume it's a purchase and not a rental. If it's a rental, when you get to 15 years, you have to deal with what happens to the rent in year 16.
Yeah.
That's a problem. But if it's a purchase, you don't have that. But when Joe and Janet, homeowner, buy the house for 15 years and sell it at year 15 or 16 or 17 or whatever, make that money we're talking about, and move on, that unit becomes market rate unit in the middle of an affordable development. You know, and what would happen is all of them are going to expire on the same day.
Right.
Because the 15, you know, from the beginning of the, I guess when their permits are finally given to occupy the places, I suppose is when the time runs. But that's going to be a relatively short period of time. In 15 years, this whole affordable housing development could become a market rate development. So that's my principal concern about the 15 years.
Yeah.
Where it falls in. You know, and the setback from, as I said, from Falmouth. And I think these are things that we can talk about, and if we can't resolve them, then we vote. You know, what's the worst, what's the better of the alternatives, what's the worst of the alternatives, and go forward.
Sure.
I don't think we should do it forever. I think maybe one shot to see if we can work it out.
Yeah, I would agree. Just continue for tonight, and at the next meeting, we make a vote one way or the other. But I very much agree with Bob about extending the length of the deed restriction longer. I also wonder out loud, after Bob made his comments, if the zoning amendment could very specifically say that these are for purchase only duplexes, not for rent. So just another something for the parties to consider and discuss. Tim?
Thank you. I think I share the sentiment of my board members. I did like what Matt had to say with leaving in section 2, and that becomes the by special permit. Because I believe the section 2, I mean, that was the language that was in there for, I think, 850, you know, for the larger multifamily development in that structure. So, you know, kind of having some flexibility for the types of projects in this area. And I also agree, I mean, if there's any other parcels around, you know, this same area in town that we can kind of identify and, you know, include in this, I'd like to discuss and see it. I'd also, there's been a lot of discussion on, you know, spot zoning tonight. And I'm assuming, has this already been, I think I heard that Karen has already, Attorney Knobler, has already reviewed this once?
Yes, in terms of form, but not to any kind of question regarding spot zoning or anything to that effect.
From my own knowledge, I think it would be good if we can, you know, kind of hear or have a review by the town attorney on how, you know, this and spot zoning in general and the implications of that. And yeah, I think it's a good idea to continue it and ask that the staff work with the applicant and the parties to review everything that we discussed tonight and bring it back for another discussion. And I also agree at that point, we don't want this to go on forever. Right. And, you know, take a vote and let this move on. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Tim. I almost forgot, Jim, something that in our conversation the other day, we talked about CWMP. I know that the CWMP looks at every lot for its potential build-out under the zoning. This obviously would change what the potential build-out would look like. Do you mind if we just seek a memo from DPW just stating that there's sufficient capacity?
Not a problem.
I'm sure there is, but we might as well. So the only challenge we have is our next meeting is April 14th. That is one of the few meetings that I am going to miss. The next meeting that I'm available is the 28th. What's your status? Checking.
Hyannis water too?
Sure, yeah. Sure. Jim? Yeah, perfect. Got a thumbs up, thank you. It's a good call. So I personally, I would seek to continue it to the 28th. That's okay with you? Okay, good with that?
Is this with a zoning amendment, does it have to be this makeup of this board here, the majority of this board here to present and vote, or if you're not in attendance for the next one, can Ray watch the tape and vote?
Yeah, one member is able to basically watch the tape, get up to speed, and then join the conversation. Is that, I have that right? Okay. One. Yes, one. Yep.
Okay.
So we'll let them fight over that. But I am very interested in this, and I want to be a part of it. So if everyone's okay, we'll do it on the 28th. Okay, I appreciate that. We're going to leave the public hearing open. If any members of the public wish to speak at the 28th, we would encourage that. So I'm going to move to continue zoning amendment TC item number 2025-075 to Monday, April 28th, here at Town Hall at 7 p.m. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Bob. All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Motion carries, and the matter is continued. Moving along on our agenda, general correspondence, we've got a Chapter 91 notice for 101 Center Lane in Centerville. That's the Green Family Trust for a seasonal pier. Another Chapter 91 application, this one an application for 60 Bay Shore Road, Hyannis, Kind Kraus, maintenance of existing pile, pier, and float. Jim, staff update for us?
Yeah, I can quickly provide a staff update. The local comprehensive planning committee has completed a first draft out for public review. We will begin our public review period with meetings at many of the villages, as well as a gathering at the public high school performing arts center. At that performing arts center, we will also provide childcare and some pizza and movies over there. So
that's great.
I'll hang out there. Steve, you can do the presentation. And so the press releases will be going out soon. So all the dates will be posted at their normal spots. We'll also have drafts of the plan hard copy at the libraries for anyone who's interested. You're always welcome to come to the town office and get a copy as well if you would like. Concurrently, we are also updating our housing production plan, as this board is very familiar with. We'll be adding a number of two public sessions in April for public comment, and then we will be returning back to the planning board with some revisions based on public feedback. This coming Friday is the zoning ad hoc subcommittee final meeting, potentially, where they are finishing the memo to council, and we'll be discussing it at that meeting. Next week, we will be discussing at town council the ADUs, the recently adopted accessory dwelling unit law that went into effect by the state to February 2nd. The council had requested a workshop, so we will be doing that soon. And then lastly, recently before you, the recreational marijuana petition is before the council on April 17th. Thank you.
Excellent. Great update. Any questions, comments, concerns for Jim? All right, moving right along. We have 2 approval of minutes required. I hope everyone has had a chance to review. We've got the February 10th, 2025 draft minutes and the February 24th, 2025 draft minutes. Do we have a motion on the February 10th?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of February 10th, 2025, and February 24th, 2025.
Excellent. 2 at once. Love it. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Both of those draft minutes are approved. Future meetings, April 14th and April 28th, 2025. Jim gave a update on housing to the town council, and he sent us the video presentation. He then gave that presentation to CPC, which I was able to listen to. I think it's much better in person, so I was just wondering if at the meeting on the 14th, Jim, if you would be willing to give that presentation again.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that, and maybe it will be a light meeting, and that will be a good thing to have. And then I'm going to plan in May, in the first meeting in May, to do a CPC update. And I'm also up for reappointment to the CPC coming up soon. So that's something to consider. I certainly would love to stay aboard if you all agree. That's it. That's all I've got. Any comments, questions, concerns before we adjourn? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Bob. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt. All those in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.